Next graphical representation of inverse trigonometric function is for cos inverse x. Okay. So now again for the cos inverse x, what we have to do? We have to first find the graph for y is equal to cos x. Okay. And then we have to move for the inverse part. Now we are having a graph for y is equal to cos x, y is equal to cos x, and some common intervals we are having, those who are having range -1 to 1. Now that are minus pi to 0, then 0 to pi, and then pi to 2 pi. Now this shows what? This shows that all these intervals have range that is -1 to 1. Now what basically these are? These are the domains. Okay. So now among them we are having a restricted domain. And what is the restricted domain? Because every domain here, every interval, domain of every interval, they are having same range. So restricted domain which we have taken is for, restricted domain is now 0, pi. Now why it is restricted? Because it is the smallest value. Okay. So now here we are taking 0 to pi. Okay. The graph is for 0 to pi, it is for 0 to 2 pi it is going, but we are discussing only from 0 to pi, and these are the coordinates for the graphical part. Now let's cut from this part to this part, let's cut it with the given values and draw a graph for it. Now here it is 0 1, it is 0 1, then pi by 2 0, pi by 2 0, and pi minus 1, pi minus 1. Now with the help of these coordinates we are going to make inverse of the cos x. Okay. Now let's start with the cos x. Okay. Now these are the domain and range already for the cos x. Now changing domain to range and range to domain, what is the use? To make a 1 1 function. Unless and until we are not having a 1 1 function, we can't find a inverse part here. Now we are having -1 to pi, here it was pi to -1, then 0 to pi by 2, 0 pi by 2, and 1 0, it is 1 0. Now let's plot these points on a graph. Let's see what type of a figure we are getting. Now it is -1 pi, then we are having here it is 0 pi by 2, and on the axis it is 1 0. So we have plotted these points changing domain to range and range to domain, and then we have plotted the points, and let's see what type of figure we are getting. Now this figure, this graph is for what? This graph is for cos inverse x or arc cos x. Okay. So this is the graphical part. Now we can define the inverse of the cos x. Now the inverse, we can write it, the inverse of cos x, or we can write it the inverse of cos function. The inverse of cos function is defined as y is equal to cos inverse x, or you can write it arc cos x, cos inverse x or arc cos x, if and only if and only if, here we are having y is equal to cos inverse x, if and only if x is equal to cos y. Okay, only then we can define it. Now cos inverse x, we have got it, that we can define it. If it is y is equal to cos inverse x, then we can write it x is equal to cos y. Now what for this particular function, now cos inverse x is a function. Now domain to range and range to domain is a function with domain x belongs to. Now here their range was -1 to 1, now it becomes domain -1 to 1, and range y belongs to, now range belongs to what? 0 to pi. Range belongs to 0 to pi. So this is the basic thing for the inverse part. Okay. Now 0 to pi restricted domain becomes restricted range here. So, okay. So the range for 0 to pi, this is called principal value. Principal value branch. This is principal value branch of inverse function of cos x. This is the inverse function of cos x. Okay. So basically this was the thing, that when domain converts to range and range to domain, the trigonometric function becomes 1 1 on 2, and then when it is 1 1 on 2, then we can find the inverse of it, and this is the figure for the inverse part. Now let's check with a small recap. Now we are having number 1 figure for y is equal to cos x, then we are having y is equal to cos inverse x. Now here, taking this y is equal to x as a mirror, if this is acted as a mirror, then this axis will become this side, this will go that side, mirror image. Okay. Then only we can say, if it is y is equal to cos x, then we can write y is equal to cos inverse x when axes were changed. Okay. So this is the mirror image of this part. Okay. So this was a small recap with the mirror image, and now remember that principal value is 0 comma pi with now cos inverse x with domain -1 to 1 and range 0 to pi.